Hello and welcome to another Improve Your Chess video. This is part 5 in a chess strategy for beginner series in which I play one of my good friends, John, who maybe studied and read a little bit on chess, but he's still at the beginner level because he doesn't play regularly, and he's just trying to improve here. So we have an exciting game, and hopefully this will help you play better yourself. So let's take a look at this. I had the white pieces and I play against John with the black pieces here. And it looks like I played at a 94.2% level versus his 70.1. And the game was pretty even for maybe the first third of the way until John had some trouble in the middle game here, and it leads to a winning result. All right, so as far as good and bad moves, nothing great or brilliant, but it looks like John had 3 inaccuracies and 2 mistakes, and I had 1 missed opportunity. So let's take a look at this game. It's a little more exciting than some of the other previous games in this series. This is the 19th Improve Your Chess video, and the final one in this 20-game series against John will be coming out in another video. And all right, so let's begin here. Sorry for the long introduction. We have, let me turn on the computer analysis. The game began with e4 and e5. So as far as strategy goes, good opening moves here. Why are these good? Well, these moves allow the bishop to develop, the queen to develop. So it opens lines for both of those pieces, which is very important as far as chess strategy. You want to make sure that you have room for your pieces to move and maneuver, and allow your pieces to get out quickly off of this back rank. That way, they're doing more than just sitting here at home. All right. Also, these e4, e5 moves help control central squares, which are important. So, you see this pawn is controlling f5 and d5, and likewise the black pawn controls d4 and f4. So important central squares being covered here. All right. So now on to the next move. I decided to play f4. This is the King's Gambit. So I had not played this against John in this series, I don't think. So, this was probably a surprising move, a different opening that he wasn't used to. And this is a strategy you can use if you know your opponent. You're not sure what they do or do not know if you haven't played against them before. But a strategy that you can use is to play a little bit of a less common opening. The King's Gambit, it is I guess I should say it's a fairly common opening, but my opponent wasn't used to this, so it probably threw him off a little bit. And it's a gambit because black could just snatch up this pawn, and if they take this pawn, that would kind of allow me to play d4 and control more of the center, and it would pull a valuable central pawn away to the edge, to the flank. So another strategy that you could try is play gambit openings to try and unbalance the position a little bit and maybe throw your opponent off. And also, you might not want to just use the same openings over and over. You could try some different openings that you're not familiar with just to see. You might find an opening that you like better. All right, so continuing on, it looks like the best thing to do is for black to take this pawn. But because my opponent, he wasn't familiar with this King's Gambit, he played I believe knight to c6, which is the third best opening. But we see the difference. Knight to c6, this move here, moving the knight here, it looks like that should be a fine move. But look at the evaluation. It drops from 0.36 in black's favor to giving white a slight edge. So now white has a slight edge, and now it's saying it's even a bigger edge than what the computer had said before. Why? Well, it doesn't grab this material, and now it gives white the opportunity to develop. So I play knight to f3. Was that the best move? Yes, it looks like that is the one move to keep white having the edge here. Now, why is this a good move? Well, it prevents a possible queen check in the future. Now, because black did not capture this pawn, now if the queen would check, if the knight wasn't here, then the pawn could just block that attack and chase the queen back. But knight to f3, why is this a good strategy for chess beginners? Well, it gets you one move closer to castling, which you always want to do. Sometimes beginners fail to get their king castled to safety quickly. Why? Well, maybe they think they want to get all their pieces out, or get a few of them out and just start attacking right away. Well, before you attack, it's usually a good idea to develop your pieces, and knights before bishops because they're slower. A bishop can move all the way across the board in one move, whereas a knight would take 1, 2, 3 moves to get from one side to the other. So knights before bishops is a good strategy. We're getting closer to castling here. All we have to do is develop our bishop, and then we can get our king castled to safety. And I've mentioned this before. Why is it good to castle quickly? Well, it gets your king to safety and it activates your rook, bringing it closer to the center. So John responds with d6, which it says is a good move. Even though it's a good move, look, the game jumps to almost half a pawn's worth of material in white's favor. So what was the best move here? It looks like d5, gaining space in the center, although I could just capture that, and then the queen could capture, but then we would have a queen activated in the center of the board. So d6 is the third best move, but it keeps white with a pretty good edge here. All right, now this seems okay. You're supporting a central pawn. You're allowing this bishop to develop, but the problem is that by playing this move d6, it blocks in your other bishop. So that's something you want to consider when it comes to chess strategy. So for you beginners out there, you might not know the difference between a good and a bad bishop. A bad bishop is a bishop on the same color squares as this bishop is here. See how the bishop is blocked in by the pawns that are on the same color? So this is a worse bishop, a bad bishop that doesn't have much room to maneuver. Whereas this bishop is free on the light squares to develop and maybe even attack the knight. All right, so next we have bishop to c4. Now, if I were to play d3, I would have a bad bishop with this light squared bishop, but now it would be outside of the pawn chain if I move this pawn to d3, and that would make my bad bishop better because it has more mobility once it gets outside of your chain of pawns. So another strategy to remember: if you're going to have a bad bishop, at least try and get it outside of the chain of pawns so it's not as limited. All right, so the game continues with bishop to e6, countering my bishop here. So his good bishop is fighting for control of the center against my bad bishop here. So they attack each other. What should be done about this? Well, I'm under attack, so I can't really ignore this. And the best move, according to the computer, is bishop takes on e6. What are the other options? I could move my bishop, and usually you don't want to move a piece twice in the opening unless you have a good reason to do so. And here I do. The best move is to capture. Now, another strategy that can help you is I have my central pawn on the light square here, and so I gave up my bad bishop for my opponent's good bishop. And I moved twice in the opening to also, once he recaptures, leave him with doubled pawns, which can be a weakness as well. And this exposes his king a little bit, so I might have a possible check here with the queen up here and then aiming at the king. So this is a possibility as well. All right, so the game continues now with castling. Now this is a good move, but not the best. The computer recommends that I play d3, which would support my central pawn here. So it would support this pawn, and if I played d3 here, my bishop would be free to cover this pawn in case black finally would capture here. All right, so I castle, which was still a good move because my bishop, or excuse me, my rook now is on f1, and it's firing up the f file towards the king side. So that is a positive for your rook here in this king's gambit variation, this opening. All right, so finally there's a capture, but now this is not the best move anymore. Now, black should be trying to just get pieces developed because I'm already ahead. I have a knight developed, I've castled my king to safety, and my rook is also on a good half-open file here. Now, something else as far as strategy, if your opponent gets ahead of you in piece development and you lag behind, well, you definitely need to try and catch up, develop your pieces, and get your king castled quickly because you don't want to leave your king stuck in the center, which can be pretty devastating if your opponent mounts an attack against your king while it's stuck in the center. Remember, once you castle, you can only be attacked from straight on or from the one side, but a king in the middle can be attacked from 3 different directions here. So another reason to castle early and castle often. All right, on to the next move. This is something that you can try and do in the king's gambit because the central pawn had been pulled here to the side. It allows you to develop your pawn in the middle, and you have both pawns centralized, controlling a lot of real estate. So an important chess strategy is to control the center of the board because these squares in the middle here, these 4 squares, they are the most important area of the board. Why? Because from the center, your pieces can move anywhere else on the board quickly from the center. And if you're controlling the center and your opponent is not, it kind of cramps your opponent's position. See here how my opponent's pawns have only moved up 1 square. I've moved 2, so I have more space in the center, which gives my pieces more room to maneuver. My bishop is now free to attack this pawn. All right, so the game continues with this e5 move, protecting the pawn that my bishop has under fire here. And this d5, this e5 move was the best move. And now it looks like I have one move here that will help me keep the advantage for white. And so, that one move is to go ahead and push my d pawn forward here, gaining more space and chasing this knight, which gives me time as my opponent is retreating or figuring out what to do with this knight and having to move away. That gives me more time to develop another piece and move a piece forward. So what is another option? I mean, I guess I could capture this pawn here, but then that could open up the center and the queens could be traded, which will take away an attacking piece possibly. Anyway, I push forward, gaining space. Another important strategy is to gain more space than your opponent. And now this is another strategy as well. Look what direction these pawns are pointing in. All of black's central pawns. Now you want to look at the two center pawns first. My two center pawns are pointing up towards the queen side. So in general, when that happens, you want to push your pawns on the queen side and attack over on the queen side. And the two central pawns for black are pointing down towards the king side here. And so, black should mount an attack against my king. But before he has a chance to do that, he has to move his knight. So a mistake is made here. Why is this a mistake? Well, you can have all the knowledge of strategy and play the best strategical moves in chess, but one bad overlooked tactic, and a tactic as simple as me being able to just capture this knight, can put you in a losing position. So look how bad this move was. This mistake was so bad that now I'm almost 2 1/4 pawns worth of material ahead now because of this knight to d4 mistake. The best move, according to the computer, would have been just to retreat back to b8. What's another option? Maybe you could come forward instead up here to b4. But the computer recommends going back instead, where the knight could reposition into the center, maybe back to here. But the mistake, why is this a mistake? Well, a good strategy is to figure out what will happen after you move a piece. So once this is moved, hopefully, if my opponent would have thought about that, he would have considered that, oh, wait a minute, this knight could capture my knight here, and then what would I do? I would have to capture with this pawn. Oh, and then the queen could go ahead and capture. So, that is something to look out for. Practice your tactics by doing puzzles, chess problems, and just practice calculation skills. And, you can get better at this by playing a lot of chess, too. You could play, a bunch of blitz games, so you get a lot of practice calculating. But slower games are probably better at first, so that's a good strategy when you're beginning, is to play slower games at first. All right, so moving on. I capture, which was the best move, recapture, and then the queen captures, going ahead a pawn. But I had a missed opportunity, according to the computer. It would have been better to leave that pawn there. Why? Well, because it's pretty hard to defend this pawn. I guess the queen could move here and try and defend it. But according to the computer, I should capture with the bishop. Because then, if the queen tries to defend this pawn, my rook would be lined up. So if the queen, let's see, if I go here, capture this pawn, and the queen would try and defend the other pawn, well, now my rook would be lined up on that queen if it goes to f6 to cover this pawn. All right, so back to the game. I missed an opportunity, but I don't know. This is still a good move. The computer says it's a miss. I'm ahead by a pawn now, and my queen is centralized, which is a good strategy. Putting your queen in the center of the board, then it can attack in all kinds of directions here. Oh, wrong way. I meant to go that way. All right, so I could also go here and line up on the king. I'm able to radiate out in this direction, but you get the picture. The queen can attack from all different directions, where I'm a lot more limited if I stay on the back rank. So here we go. The queens confront one another, but this is another mistake. Why is this a mistake? Well, we'll see here shortly. And why was this move made? Well, perhaps my opponent wanted to develop his bishop and was afraid of my queen capturing this pawn. And because I'm attacking, a good strategy is to trade off attacking pieces if your king is in trouble, like it is stuck here in the center. So, my opponent probably hoped that I would just capture the queen, but I have a better move, and the best move in the position is to make the queen move to the flank here, which is usually not as good as if you're centralized, but I would be attacking the king with check. And the only way to block that is to block with a pawn, but then I could capture, pawn would recapture, and then the queen would capture with check, and the king would be stuck in the center, and it's not looking good for black. All right, so back to the game. Queen to f6 was played. What does the computer like instead? Just developing that knight and attacking my pawn in the center. All right, queen to a4 check. What does white do here? Well, the king plays the best move over to d8, but now the king is really stuck in the center and can no longer castle. And remember, you can't castle out of check, but even if he could have castled and my queen is attacking this pawn and could have captured that. But in the game now we have the rook attacking, the best move in the position. The queen is under fire here. The bishop is protecting that rook. So the queen is forced to run, but an inaccuracy is played. Queen to e7 would have been better because a tactic is overlooked here. Now, if the queen would have gone to e7, it would protect this bishop. But now I'm able to capture with check, and we have this skewer of the king and the rook here. So it's really looking rough for black, and that's why you want to castle early and often to get your king barricaded on the corner here. Like mine, it's a little open after playing the f-pawn. The queen could try and check me here at some point, but by going here, well, it's not possible at the moment because my queen is covering that. But if the queen wasn't there, there's a possibility of me attacking. But let's get down to what actually happened and the conclusion of the game. So the queen has moved here, allowing me to capture. The king attacks my rook, but I'm able to capture the other rook, and now I'm just very far ahead in material. And because of the queen and the rook, I'm threatening to chase the king further. They're both lining up on this square here. So we have h5. my opponent, I guess, is not sure what to do at this point, and he's running out of options. So we have the best move played, rook to e8, and white is winning by almost +8 at this point. So king runs for its life, but now the queen. So we have another skewer here with the king and the queen lined up. So an important strategy, and this is regarding tactics. Take a look anytime pieces are lined up on each other and see if there's a way you can attack them. And that goes for diagonal pieces as well. Bishops are good at attacking pieces lined up on a diagonal. All right, so the king runs. We take the queen. The king recaptures. And now it's saying this is an inaccuracy, leading to a mate in 6. But, the end is near here. So I attack with the queen. Now I had a better move. I could have activated another piece here by bringing my bishop up here to e3 and cutting off any escape squares. But at this point, my opponent is just running for his life, and we have a mate here. So queen to e6, and this is why the strategy of castling early and often is very important. You don't want your king stuck out in the center of the board like this game. So develop your pieces, castle quickly to get that king to safety, and just remember, there was a lot of tactics in this game, but you can learn all the strategy you want, and if you're not keeping an eye on those tactics as well, then the strategy, whatever you choose, won't matter as much. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this game. I will do the final 20th game in a future video, another strategy game. That game will be a little bit longer and go more in depth. So feel free to leave any comments. Like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.